Wasteland Legend. The theory that fixes every timeline problem in the Mad Max franchise isn't about the apocalypse or the wasteland. It's the idea that Max Rockatansky never existed at all. Reddit user, the Zerminator, first proposed this reading, arguing that Max isn't a literal character, but a mythological figure whose story gets passed down orally through wasteland communities, each retelling shaped by whoever's doing the telling. George Miller has backed this framing in multiple interviews, stating he always believed the first three movies were being told around a campfire about Max, treating each film not as biography, but as a different community's version of the same legend. The age problem is the hardest anchor. Across 5 films, if the same Max existed literally, he'd be somewhere in his 70s in Fury Road, yet the character appears to be in his 30s. Different actors, different physical builds, non-aging across decades, and Hardy's Max hesitating before giving his name, as if he's trying it on rather than claiming it. In his 2024 NPR interview, Miller said, "The audience tells you what your film is," and noted that different cultures latched onto Max as entirely different archetypes. Japan saw a lone samurai, France a Western gunslinger, Scandinavia a Viking wandering the wasteland. The History Man in Furiosa makes this structural. 4 different versions of Dementus' death are presented simultaneously, with the History Man confirming one is true without saying which. Miller built the unreliable narration framework into the canon rather than patching around it. If Max is a legend rather than a person, the franchise becomes a mythology-building project disguised as an action series. Every film a different village's version of the same story, which is exactly how Miller has always talked about it. 4 Horsemen. The 3 warlords Max drives through in Fury Road aren't just wasteland thugs, they map almost perfectly onto the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and Max himself completes the set as Death. The theory spread through the fan community shortly after Fury Road's 2015 release. Immortan Joe represents Conquest or Pestilence, the white horse, marked by white war paint and ivory armor, enslaving people into his compound. The Bullet Farmer maps to War, the red horse, a character whose entire dialogue is aggression. The People Eater corresponds to Famine, controlling Gastown's fuel economy, managing scarcity, and deciding who gets what. That leaves Max as Death. His O-negative blood type is branded onto his chest. He carries the dead in his hallucinations. He can't be killed, and he leaves enemies and allies alike dead wherever he goes. Revelation 6, verse 8, describes death followed by Hades, and Max in Fury Road is trailed by the War Boys, who worship Valhalla, a Hades-adjacent afterlife built on dying in glory. The theory acknowledges the pairing isn't perfect, 3 warlords for 3 horsemen, but argues the gap exists precisely to place Max as the 4th, Death arriving to pass through what Conquest, War, and Famine have already broken. Feral Kid Theory. When Tom Hardy's Max picks up a small music box in Fury Road, fans noticed it was the same kind of gift Mel Gibson's Max gave to the feral kid in Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, and that single prop launched one of the franchise's most debated theories. In The Road Warrior, the feral kid is a mute, boomerang-wielding child, and at the film's end, the narrator is revealed to be that same feral kid as an old man. The theory argues that Hardy's Max isn't Mel Gibson's Max grown older, but the feral kid himself, now an adult who inherited Max's name and identity. Hardy's Max barely speaks in Fury Road, communicates through grunts, and hesitates before giving his name, as if Max is something he chose rather than something he was born with. George Miller addressed the theory in a 2015 IGN interview, calling it a great idea, but noting that The Road Warrior explicitly states the feral kid became the chief of the Great Northern Tribe, not a wandering road warrior. Miller added that these are allegories, and in many ways, the story is in the eye of the beholder, confirming the ambiguity without endorsing either reading. His refusal to fully close the door despite having a clear counter-argument suggests he prefers the franchise's interpretive openness intact. All in his head. One of the oldest Mad Max theories argues that after his family was destroyed in the original 1979 film, Max Rockatansky's mind snapped, and every heroic rescue in every subsequent film exists only in his imagination. The theory's foundation is the Road Warrior's opening narration, a man haunted by the demons of his past, a man who wandered out into the wasteland, read not as adventure story framing, but as a clinical description of a dissociated mental state. In Mad Max, Toe Cutter's gang runs down Max's toddler son Sprague, killing him instantly, and leaves his wife Jessie critically injured, in a coma she never wakes from. Max's final act is cold-blooded revenge, not rescue, and the theory reads that failure to save the people he loved as the trauma that fractures his mind. In every subsequent film, Max saves a group of vulnerable people: the oil community in The Road Warrior, children near Bartertown, the 5 wives in Fury Road, each rescue mirroring what he couldn't do for his own family, guilt processed as wish fulfillment. In Fury Road, the hallucinations are explicit. A young girl named Glory, identified in tie-in comics as someone Max failed to save shortly before arriving at the Citadel, appears throughout the film. If all post-film 1 events are hallucination, the franchise's timeline inconsistencies become coherent, the product of a broken mind with no obligation to physical logic. Analysts who have examined Fury Road closely note it conforms to clinical PTSD symptomology, hypervigilance, dissociation, and guilt-driven compulsive behavior. If you're enjoying this, I post content like this all the time. A subscription would really help. Thanks. V8 Religion. The War Boys in Fury Road believe they'll ride into Valhalla if they die gloriously for Immortan Joe, but the theory is that Joe invented this religion specifically to make soldiers who were already dying want to die for him. The cult of the V8, documented in the Fury Road companion comic, holds that dying in battle earns entry into Valhalla, riding eternal shiny and chrome. The critical detail: War Boys are already dying, suffering radiation-induced cancers regardless of what they do. Joe transformed that inevitability into a religious aspiration. The theory's sharpest evidence is that Joe's own sons are treated differently, not sent on suicide missions, not painted in chrome, not offered up to Valhalla. He built the social contract around deaths that served him while insulating the people who carried his bloodline. He's a cult architect who weaponized his army's inevitable mortality and turned it into their most powerful motivator. Immortal Max. Across 5 films, Max Rockatansky is shot, crashed, dragged behind vehicles, and physically brutalized in ways that should be fatal. And the theory is that he literally can't die, kept alive by guilt he can never fully discharge. The immortality theory draws on archetypes Miller has invoked: Cain, the wandering Jew; Longinus, the soldier who pierced Christ, all figures condemned to walk the earth indefinitely until some condition of redemption is met that keeps moving out of reach. In Fury Road, Max gives blood continuously to Nux, at a volume medical analysis confirms would be fatal for a normal person. If a single literal Max existed across all 5 films, the timeline puts him between 70 and 80 years old during Fury Road, yet he appears to be in his mid-30s. The Spirit of Justice variant argues the original Max died, possibly during The Road Warrior, and what appears in subsequent films is his spirit manifesting wherever justice is needed. The Guilt as Anchor reading holds that Max can only rest once he achieves a redemption he never quite reaches, since he always leaves before it can take. At the close of Fury Road, he walks away from the Citadel. He never stays, he never builds. The theory reads that pattern as the fundamental condition of what he is. History Man myth. Furiosa introduced a character called the History Man, a tattooed keeper of Wasteland records, and the theory is that everything shown in Furiosa might be his unreliable retelling rather than a literal account. The History Man, played by George Shevtsov, is described in Miller's own production notes as someone who prioritizes utility over integrity, meaning he'll reshape the record when the story needs shaping. The film's climax makes this explicit. 4 completely different deaths for Dementus are presented simultaneously, with the History Man confirming one is the truth without specifying which. This isn't an editing trick. It's built-in unreliable narration acknowledged by the film itself. The theory extends the logic. If the History Man's account of Dementus' death is unreliable by the film's own admission, every other scene in Furiosa could carry the same caveat. George Miller, in his 2024 No Film School interview, stated the History Man exists to explain how the same characters can look different from time to time, while others look familiar but aren't, making him the in-universe explanation for every continuity inconsistency across 5 films. Miller didn't just acknowledge that the franchise has continuity problems, he built the answer to them directly into the 5th film. Aunty Entity. Aunty Entity in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is presented as the villain, but the theory is that she's a mirror of Max, a former hero corrupted by what it costs to hold what she built. Director George Miller stated the character was built on the assumption that Today's tyrant is yesterday's hero. And Tina Turner was cast specifically because her positive public persona would make Aunty Entity's fall feel like a tragedy. She built Bartertown with genuine intent, trade, hope, structure in a world gone sideways. The theory argues she and Max are the same figure at different points in the same arc. Max still fighting to hold his humanity, while Aunty Entity has already lost that fight. The film's ending makes this explicit. She spares Max's life at the close of Beyond Thunderdome, which only makes sense if he recognizes in him the person she used to be. Green Place. The green place of many mothers in Fury Road looks like a dying remnant, but the theory is that it's actually a surviving fragment of pre-collapse civilization, specifically a model of how society could have developed differently if domination hadn't won. The Vuvalini, also called the Many Mothers, are the matriarchal tribe from which Furiosa originates, and their home was a fertile canyon with forest, water, and an energy infrastructure the production design team confirmed included wind turbines, solar panels, and a parabolic solar cooker. This is deliberate world building showing a community that retained functional technology by operating on cooperation rather than control. Furiosa shows the green place was still partially intact roughly 15 years before Fury Road, turning sour only as soil contamination spread from the surrounding wasteland. The theory connects its decline directly to the Citadel's model. Joe's hierarchy preserved power by hoarding, and the Vuvalini's distributed model couldn't defend against that kind of predation. At Fury Road's close, Furiosa opens the Citadel's water to the population below. The theory reads that moment as the Green Place's model running again, this time inside a structure that has the defenses the Vuvalini lacked. Dementus Mirror. The theory about Dementus in Furiosa is that he and Furiosa aren't enemies so much as the same person, shaped by the same loss, separated only by the choice each made after the apocalypse took their family. Dementus states explicitly he had a family before the collapse, and his only holdover from that life is a teddy bear belonging to his dead child, strapped to his belt throughout the film. Furiosa was abducted from the Green Place as a small child, and spent years trying to return home, never getting there before the soil turned. Both respond with obsessive, forward-driving motion. George Miller confirmed in his 2024 Deadline interview that he views them as thematically linked, describing Dementus as someone with a humanity about him buried beneath the warlord persona. The visual argument is the teddy bear versus the peach pit Furiosa plants at the film's end. The same gesture, one a symbol of everything the apocalypse burned, and one a seed for whatever might grow next. Still functioning world. Most viewers think of Mad Max as post-apocalyptic from its first frame, but the original 1979 film takes place in a world where society is still technically functioning, and the theory is that the entire first film is the apocalypse happening in real time. Mad Max opens with a few years from now, and depicts functioning law enforcement, open stores, and a world stable enough for a family road trip. Fuel shortages are visible, but gas stations still operate. The MFP is still funded and responding. Film analysis has framed Mad Max as a film about the tipping point between order and chaos, a society losing a fight it doesn't yet know it's already lost. The Road Warrior is set 3 years later, and by that point, full collapse has already occurred, which means Mad Max, 1979, depicts the exact window in which civilization ended, with Max as the witness to the moment it tipped. Boys Lineage. The Warboys in Fury Road are all pale, shaved, and physically similar, and the theory is that many of them are Immortan Joe's literal biological sons, bred over decades to build the army he needed to maintain power. In Fury Road, Immortan Joe's explicit goal is a perfect male heir, stated in dialogue when his wife's unborn son is revealed. The Fury Road tie-in comics confirm Joe built his army through both recruitment and children raised within the Citadel system from birth, with a distinction drawn between war pups and older war boys who came up through raids. The theory argues the war boys' uniform appearance is partly a product of shared genetics, with Joe as a prolific biological father across the Citadel's population over decades. If many war boys are literally his sons, the cult-father dynamic layered over a biological one changes the horror of what he's built. These aren't just indoctrinated followers, they're children raised with no frame of reference beyond dying for the man who fathered them. Nux's arc supports this in emotional terms. He transitions from suicidal devotion to Joe toward genuine care for Capable, and the film argues that beneath the indoctrination is a young man who never chose any of this, and who responds to his first real choice by dying for people he actually loves. Max is death. Strip away the cars and the chrome and the wasteland theology, and the theory underneath is that Max Rokitansky isn't a man at all. He's a force, a spirit, possibly the physical embodiment of death itself, wandering a world that already ended. The Spirit of Justice variant argues that Max from the 1979 film died, possibly at the end of Mad Max itself, and what appears in subsequent films is his spirit manifesting wherever justice is needed, in different bodies, across impossible stretches of time. Miller has explicitly invoked the literary archetypes that support this: the lone samurai, the wandering Viking, the Western gunslinger, all figures who exist outside ordinary mortality and appear at moments of collapse when the scales tip too far. In his 2024 No Film School interview, Miller said he always believed the first 3 movies were being told around a campfire. And if Max is a campfire legend, the supernatural reading of his nature is the intended frame. The Four Horsemen theory gives this cosmological weight. If 3 warlords are conquest, war, and famine, Max, completing the set as death, means the apocalypse didn't happen to the world happened to death, and the franchise is about what death does after everyone's already gone. Every film ends the same way. Max saves the people who needed saving, then leaves. He never builds. He never stays. The theory argues this isn't stubbornness or trauma, it's the fundamental nature of what he is. Death passes through, it doesn't settle. Miller's 2024 NPR framing, "The audience tells you what your film is the closest he's come to confirming that Max's nature is intentionally left open. He's whatever the story needs him to be, and that's not how a human character works. It's how a myth works. If you found this worth your time, consider subscribing to keep up with everything we post. Thanks for watching.